talk show is brought to you by
Organissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.organissima.com. Organissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
You are listening to Let's Talk About It with your show host, the celebrity Dr. Cheryl Bryant Bruce. Hello, everybody. It is Dr. Cheryl Bryant Bruce, MD, the celebrity doc, and we are here again with Chatters That Matter. Let's talk about it. I am here with my celebrated co-host, Hurricane H. And I just want to take a second to welcome Hurricane H because he has now been officially made the co-host of Chatters That Matters. And we look forward to being a super team. Chatters That Matters brings you information that is geared to educate and entertain about anything and everything related to health. Today, we have with us an illustrious guest, Iman Aghay. Iman is a serial, and I mean serial entrepreneur. He is the creator of the Ultimate Course Formula, and he is a TEDx speaker. And we are going to talk about how Iman beat back death to become what he is today. So Iman, without further ado, if you can give us a little bit more about your background and tell us your story.
Yeah, well, I'm super excited first to be here on the Chatters That Matter and with you guys. This is an awesome thing to be here and the work that you guys are doing. So it's an interesting thing because Dr. Cheryl were asking Hurricanes, like, what's the topic of today? And I was like, I don't think we actually chose a topic because we wanted to sit together and have a conversation about living life. And I think living life to its full purpose and defining that maybe for each individual, not that we define that for anyone, but giving them the tools and the minds to shift. So every person can actually do it for themselves. And I had a very unique experience several years back that I'm one of the lucky people in the world that got through that situation and got through that experience and made it alive, but changed the entire mindset of my life. But before getting to that experience, let me tell you the story of where I was in my life, where I got to that experience. So at the time that, like maybe about 15 years ago, I was living in Iran and I was a public speaker, but I had like bigger desires. I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. I wanted to impact hundreds of thousands of people. And at the time, my wife at the time and I decided to move to North America so I can expand my career in an international way because I wanted to speak English. I wanted to get a passport that allows me to travel easier. And so we moved to North America. We moved to Canada. And that was an easier path for us to move to Canada. And so we moved to Canada and as we landed here, we realized that our money is not going to follow us. Some stuff happened in Iran and our money got stuck. So we are like, okay, so we need to build everything from scratch. And I know that many people who had a dream gave up on so many amazing things in their life to make that dream come true, right? They did whatever it took. And so we were on our journey on the path of, let's do whatever it takes to bring our dream to reality, and kind of in a way I call the sacrifice path, the place that you're alive, you're like, well, for the next 2 years I'm going to sacrifice like what I want to do, and then next thing you know, 5 years and 10 years and 20 years you're still on the same sacrifice path that you were like 20 years ago, right? So we started on like kind of trying to find jobs, and I was like, I get whatever job I can. I was applying for any jobs and I could not find a single job because it was 2009. It was right after 2008 recession. There were hundreds of people that were out of work, and we got to a point that we needed to choose how many meals we eat a day. So like, we're like, okay, we're going to skip breakfast. We're going to skip lunch. We're going to just kind of have dinner. And then we got to a point that we knew that by the end of the month, we don't have the money to pay the rent. And there's a point in your life that you look at a failure and you say, I am not going to go through that failure. Like, I've had a lot of failures in my life, but that is not what I'm willing to do, right? And for me, it was like becoming homeless. And so I was on the countdown to become homeless, 30 days, 29 days, 28 days. And we got to 17 days away from becoming homeless. And I woke up that day and I realized I'm already homeless and I don't know it. Because I said, even if I find a job in the next 14 or 17 days, the first paycheck is going to come 14 days after, when I'm already homeless. So essentially, I'm already homeless and I don't know it, right? And then when you got to that failure point of your life that you're not willing to have, right, on your life, on your resume, right? That's the time that you stop all the bullshit story that you tell yourself why you can't do something, and you actually go and do the damn thing, right? And the bullshit story I was telling myself was, I'm a new immigrant. I can't speak English properly. I don't have family and friends. I don't have a network. So I can't start my own business. But then when I was 17 days away from becoming homeless, and I realized I'm already homeless and nobody's going to come and pay my rent at the end of the month, I'll be homeless at the end of the month, I was like, oh, crap. Forget about not being able to speak English. Forget about this. Forget about all of those things. Just get your ass out there, start building your business. And I did. And 3 days later, I found my very first customer who paid me $1,800. And that money paid the rent of the month and bought us some food. And the next month, the same client paid me another $1,800, and I found another client at $800 a month, which was my rent. So I got my rent covered by the monthly payment client, right? And then my wife got a job, and so like we started kind of paying the rent and like food and everything else. But then I found myself doing something that I never wanted to do, but I needed to do it. So I call it the golden handcuffs. Like, you're in a place that you keep doing the work, you don't like the work, but you keep doing it, right? And that work for me was a web design company. So I started a web design company. Never wanted to be a web designer. I just so happened to know how to sell websites. I didn't even know how to design them. So during the day, like from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., I would go out there and would meet people one-on-one. And then at 5 p.m., I would go to a networking event. From 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., I was usually at networking events to find appointments for tomorrow, right? To meet people. And then at 9 p.m., I would go home and then have dinner at 10, and then start learning how to design websites from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., 3 a.m., sometimes 5 a.m., and design all the websites that I sold during the day, right? And then again, would sleep for a couple of hours, and then again, go back to work, right? So I was stuck in this like golden handcuffs that I really needed to work, but I hated the work. And so I built that company to about 6 figures, and things were looking okay financially, finally. And one day I woke up, I was bleeding internally. And I was rushed to the hospital where doctors realized I've lost 60% of my blood. And well, usually they say if you lose 40% of your blood, you're at the chance of getting a heart attack or get serious things and you're gonna die, right? So I've lost 60% of my blood. My hemoglobin was at 53 and or 53 or 48, I don't remember, because this happened twice to me. One time was 53, one time was 48. And like technically I was a dead man walking, and the doctors were like, you don't even have enough blood that we can perform surgery on you to stop this bleeding. Like, we just need to give you blood, hope that this blood we are giving you is faster than the blood you're losing. So tomorrow morning, hopefully we can perform a surgery and we can stop this bleeding. So they connected me to a blood transfusion and they left me and said, well, hopefully we're going to see you tomorrow morning.
Now,
And
Iman, what thoughts were going through your head at this time? You've been in a job that you've hated, and now basically this job that you've hated has given you ulcerations and it's causing it's taking your health from you. What was going through your mind?
well, I was thinking, I was not thinking about the job, I was thinking about my life. I was thinking about what I made out of it. And the reality, and this is an interesting thing because people think everybody is afraid of death.
Mhm.
But the reality, at least for me and many other people that later on I talked to, people that are on their deathbed are not afraid of dying. They're afraid of losing everything that they worked hard for. They're afraid of losing their family. They're afraid of losing their friends. They're afraid of losing all the connections and the money. And like, they are afraid of losing everything they worked hard for,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know? And I know kind of like it makes sense that like you feel like they're both the same thing, but they are not. When
Right.
you're not there, you're not like, oh my God, I'm afraid of this death coming toward me. You're afraid of leaving all of these things behind and not having anything else. You're afraid of that unknown of what happens if I don't have anything, right?
Absolutely.
And and as I was lying on my deathbed, I started thinking about my funeral. I started thinking about how people are going to remember me tomorrow, and I hated the way that people are going to remember me. I was like, tomorrow, if people come to my funeral, they're going to say Iman was a nice guy. He was a web designer, and he was a nice guy. And I sure as hell didn't want to die a nice guy. Like, I didn't come to this world to die a nice guy. I came to this world to make a massive positive impact in people's lives. I didn't want people to come to my deathbed, to my funeral and say, oh, Iman was a nice guy. I wanted them to come and say, Iman changed my life.
So you had to be in a very painful place at that time.
It
I mean,
was
not just physically painful, but emotionally and mentally painful.
absolutely right. Absolutely. And then, well, they were giving me more and more blood transfusion, right? Because I went through 5 bags of blood transfusion. And every time they were going to connect the next bag, they were like, well, hopefully we're not gonna die with this one, right? Because they're like, we can also have altercation with blood transfusion. So like, it was an interesting night, like every night, like every time, right? But then but then as I started going through this, like literally I was seeing, like how you go to a gas station and you're like pumping up fuel on your car and you see like the gauge is coming up. That was the same thing for me with my blood, right? They were giving me blood transfusion. They would do a hemoglobin test to see how much hemoglobin I have, and then the next one, right?
I
So
always found that kind of interesting because they're giving you blood, but it feels like they're taking just as much away from you. All the vampires keep coming in and snatching your blood away from you.
right. So anyway, so I saw like coming up. So I saw like 65 and 75, right? So now it's coming up, right? So as that coming up, as the gauge is coming up, I'm like, I'm having more hope, right, to stay alive. And I think it was on the 3rd or the 4th bag. And I said, well, it seems that you'll probably survive your deathbed. And if you do, what do you want to change? What
Now,
do you
let me
want
ask
to
you
change?
something. Was that kind of a scary feeling? Because, initially you were fearing losing everything, but now you're realizing that you are going to survive, but the life you left is not the life that you want. Was it a little bit frightening or unsettling, not knowing what was going to come next?
Well, yes and no, and I'm going to tell you. A person that is on their deathbed and just mentally experienced losing everything they had, right? I hadn't, but I was experiencing the loss, right?
Right.
So the reason that change is scary is because anything that involves change comes with loss, right? So when you want to change something, you're letting go of some stuff to replace them with some new stuff. So when you're letting go of some stuff, you are losing some things, right? And and the loss is the scary part of the change.
Right.
So it's a loss of security, it's a loss of finance, a loss of health, it's a loss of something, right? But for a person that just experienced losing everything they had in their life and going through all those emotions, including their health, including their family, including their mind, including their life, there is no loss that's the scary. So if you talk to people who have survived their deathbed, they say, after I survived my deathbed, I changed everything that I didn't like. And well, the day before their deathbed, they didn't like them, but they never took action because the loss was scary. But then now you took the scariness of the loss because nothing is as scary.
Did you have a new sense of optimism?
I had a new sense of that. The sense was, if it doesn't happen, I don't want to go back to what I was experiencing. I was caused that biggest regret. I've gone through so much pain in my life and so much fear in my life, but no fear ever comes close to the fear of being on your deathbed, looking back at your life and realize that you were alive, but you never lived.
So
Understood.
So Iman, I'm listening. You probably see my emotions and my hands all over the place. I'm just absorbing. First of all, just listening to this story, and people probably watching and listening right now, they'd be like silent for a moment because they have to absorb it all. I mean, it's not easy to be here on the set and talking about an experience such as this one, and your story obviously is touched a lot of lives because your determination, your immigration piece, your setting goals and your dreams, all that stuff, was portrayed by you. You've designed it, you worked towards it, you made the necessary move. And it is not easy. I mean, coming from Iran to North America with all the stuff that's going on in the politics and everything, that is a big change. And then you had to suffer through certain things, and life is not easy when you're an immigrant. And I can relate to that. I happen to have also moved from overseas to the States. And so I can see the actual determination and all the things that you want to do and achieve in your life. And then you got to this particular point, first of all, you survived the worst because financially you were getting to the point where it's over. And then you didn't give up at the last minute. You made it happen. By the way, that's actually an advice for everybody watching and listening right now. Folks, it's never too late. And don't give up on your dreams. No matter what, you can turn things around. The last minute can be the minute where things happen. You never know. You mentioned something about failure, and I'm almost digressing a little bit, but just getting into the point I'm trying to make for, the experience, the current experience you were talking about. You talked about failure. To me, there was no failure. You were just trying from one thing to the other. And, I don't even believe in failure personally because it's only failure. Yeah, it's only failure if you stop, but you never did. It's just you transited from one thing, experience, and I call them experiences, from one to the other. Good or bad, otherwise, it's all learning experiences, but you made it. And you did something that a lot of people sometimes fail to do, even when they have everything. You started a business not even knowing, part of it, and you were able to pitch that and made it work. But then you did the correct part, which is learn what's necessary for the business on the go. Now, it might not have been the stuff you loved. It's not really what you enjoyed, but you did it because you needed to. You had a family to make the income from the revenue and just solidify your situation, and then hopefully transit to better. Now comes this tragic incident. First of all, doctor, you're a doctor, and this is not something new to you. But for me to hear, you're losing blood internally, and you just go in front of a doctor and they say, well, we don't know, tomorrow may or may not be here. That is probably, it's, again, talking about emotion. I don't care how good you were in your emotions, that will just drop all the stuff. But what's so interesting about your view right now is that you weren't that bad. You've experienced a lot of loss, but this is different. You were not afraid of death. And you know what? That's probably true, because we all know that is happening. One day or another, we all going to depart. The part that is difficult is everything else that you worked for, good, bad. It's like the losses, the family, everything that you, and you mentioned something powerful about what would people think about me? I didn't leave a legacy. So, okay, he's nice, and then goodbye, rest in peace. And that's really the end of the story. That's not really what people want. People want something, well, maybe not everybody, but you're the person that wants a legacy, that wants to keep on. Doctor, you wanted to interject there.
Yeah, I actually want to give this story a little bit more framework, because I think that it's important to realize, we all talk about leaving legacies and stuff. And Iman was looking at the end of his life, but Iman was only like 25 years old when all of this happened. He was very, very young.
Oh, well, thank you for making that. That's a big deal. Again, for our audiences today, this is a young life. This is vibrant living as it's a peak of life. Those are the best days, right? I hope that every day is a good day, and that's how I play my life personally. But you're at that age, just in the beginning of all the stuff, and the sky's the limit of what you can achieve, and you get to this. I have to say, first of all, kudos, just the way you thought about it. Not everybody probably can think the way you did. And even some people say I don't care. I just want to live. I don't care about what people think about me. Some people can be well, I just want to survive. I will just move on and start. So everybody has probably a different angle, but only the people that have experienced it would probably can speak to it. But you did. And we don't get oftentimes, someone like you that actually comes back, and really shares this value, because people take things for granted in life. And we talked about, life, and this is all about you, Iman. Life is precious, and time is precious. And at that moment, time was like the only thing that you had, because you needed the time to get the blood, those next pints of blood. You needed the time to revisit all your life and reset your mind on what's going to happen eventually if you're back. And you also were hopeful that you will make it, you'll rebound. And you know what? Maybe that's actually a part of why you rebound, because the fact is your mind plays also, if you collapse and you said, okay, this is it, I'm out, maybe, your body, I don't know, clinically speaking, I can't speak to it, but mentally speaking, I believe in the power of the mind over the body. And you can certainly, push to live. And we've seen stories, we've heard stories where people come back from some situation that no one will ever think that they can come back from, but they do. So I'll stop there. But I just wanted to really just kind of push that item out to the audiences, because it is power. Just to this point, from what you experienced all along to that level, and how you thought about it when you were there, and now you get into hope. So let's take it from the hope piece.
Actually, on the thing that you mentioned here, so a little bit of correction on the years. So I moved to Canada when I was 25. So this was 10 days before my 27th birthday. Okay. So it's not, but there is an importance in that. So that's why I put the correction, because I'm going to explain what's the importance of that 10 days to my 27th birthday. But the biggest regrets, or top 5 regrets of people on their deathbed, right? So there's a person that was a palliative care nurse. And she asked people on their deathbed about their 5 biggest regrets. And a few of those biggest regrets are: I wish I allowed myself to be happier.
Mhm.
I wish I'd stayed in contact with my family and friends. And I wished I lived true to my heart.
Big one. Big one.
Nobody, at least in the top 5 regrets of people who have died, nobody said, I wish I worked harder. Nobody said, I wish I watched more TV. Nobody said, I wished I bought more stuff during sales. Nobody said, I like, people were on their deathbed, were focused on what time could fix, which was living true to their heart. And if they got a second chance, they would live true to their heart from that point forward, staying with their family and friends. So they would stay in contact with their family and friends. They would, like, everything that they regretted were things that could be solved with getting a second chance.
Mm.
Right? And that's exactly what you said, Harkin, in the conversation that you were having. Is like, yes, this is the, like, it's the time, like the time that we have on this planet. And actually that's what, so later on, several years after that, I delivered a TEDx talk exactly on this, that we are having so many bad habits, that our bad habits are causing our lifelong regrets. We spend so much time in front of TV, and then on our deathbed, we're going to say, I wish I stayed in contact with my family and friends. Shut off the TV, pick up the phone, and call your family and friends.
Mm-hmm.
Go to their place and hang out with them, or just, I mean, distances are far these days, but at least make a phone call, right? All of those things, right? Or
There's always soon.
Right. Or people say, like, I wish stay true to my heart. And guess what they're doing? They're spending time every single day on social media, watching TikTok videos and Instagrams, all of those things. And guess what? You're doing this because you're avoiding what you want. So it's easier to take it in as opposed to accepting what you want and go and live through to that. So if you need to have a hard conversation with a family member, it's easier to watch a TikTok video instead of shutting off that TikTok video, going out and have that hard conversation with that family member that allows you to live true to your heart.
Say that again, because that's a very, very powerful statement that you just made.
So one of the things that we do, we avoid hard conversations and hard actions by having input reality. So for example, like when people are watching TikTok, when people are watching YouTube, when they are watching episodes after episodes of Netflix shows or TV, what we are actually doing is that we are trying to avoid some stuff that are harder to do internally. Like, for example, let's say you have a problem with your spouse and you need to have a conversation with them, that conversation leads to you have an easier, more truthful situation with your heart, right? But if you have that conversation, that's going to lead into inconvenience. Like, they're going to be angry, they're going to be mad, they're going to feel like, right? And yet it's easier. So we choose, let's just spend some time on our Instagram or on TikTok or like all of these things, as opposed to shutting that down and sitting there and understanding what it is that we actually want. That piece itself is very challenging and painful, right? So instead of sitting there and just like, okay, let me actually get a pen and paper and go write down something like what it is that I want in my life. And then let's make sure that we go and have that conversation with my spouse, with my loved one, with my kids, right? And then we are like, no, you know what? that's going to cause inconvenience. So we choose to live in inconvenience and not true to our heart because it's challenging, and also but the person that and it represents some loss, right? What if this person decides to leave me? Then I'm not going to be loved and I'm going to die alone. So I much rather not live true to my heart and be loved than living true to my heart. But what the problem happens is that you are not you. You are not you. And you're not being loved for who you are. You're being loved for the convenience that you're providing to another person. And when you get on your deathbed, you look back and you're like, I never lived true to my heart.
You settled.
Interrupt you there because that, again, that's a very poignant point. And so many people, women in particular, will live an alternate person, someone other than who they really are. They will sacrifice themselves. And the cost of that sacrifice is very, very steep and usually is reflected by poor health because it causes stress. Stress causes inflammation. It causes disease. So it's a very, very high price to pay, this inauthenticity to self, thinking you're pleasing somebody else. And the other part of that is usually on the other side of that, because you have not been authentically you. You do eventually start to change because it becomes intolerable. And then the other person rejects the real you because you're no longer serving their needs the way they want them served. They've developed a certain expectation, and now you are breaching the contract. And so it again leads to stress and discord. So that's a very, very important point that you bring, Iman.
Yeah.
And if I may, just to add one thing, I mean, you're talking about the concept where people, I refer to it as the ostrich effect. They just want to put their head down and let everything happen because they don't want to face the reality of things. Because to your point, it is difficult to face life or to face the real thing. And so maybe by escaping and not just looking the other way, things will happen. Eventually it gets to them, and to your point, doctor, it gets to them in the wrong way because now they're overly stressed and everything else can happen to their mental health, physical health, you name it. And eventually the outcome will still be the same. They still might, dismantle that relationship. They still might, change, to, and just argue and whatever. And the outcome's still going to be bad. But if they faced it, head on in the beginning, and to your point, cherished every moment of their life and living a true self, because to your point, I'm at a point personally today, and I say it loud and clear on videos and shows and stuff. I really don't know. I mean, I want to live my life the way I want it. I can care less about what people think of me. I'm working on my legacy, as you mentioned, and you know what? I'm trying to do the best, with anybody that's in my world. I try to reach out to people, but sometimes not all this stuff can happen the same way you want it or expect it. And I'm not living to the expectation of others. That's the other part. We live because we're always looking at what other people think about us and how they see us, how they perceive it, but not because of how we want to live. And we wouldn't even realize that. I mean, your experience, you got that from the get-go. This is wrong. This is how I'm going to live. Most people don't realize that. And the only other thing that can actually close to death will be age. Because as you age, you become a lot more wise, and therefore you start figuring out for yourself, time is ticking. I might as well. Listen, that's what I have been,
Into some real unwise elderly people. So,
well, that's true. Well, again, it's also, we just said it, right? People avoid reality.
Yes.
And some people live to that level for as long as they can. And sometimes that is workable. You can manipulate it and maneuver it through that age and not realize like what the hell just happened in my life, and you want to do this. And you mentioned something 25 and 27. Well, a lot of people at that age, don't even think about, death and what's going on and legacy. They just live the life. I mean, I was there too. I mean, yeah, I had my dreams and stuff, but you want to enjoy the moment, but you don't realize that life is gotta catch up to you quick. And you know what? Before you know it, decades move on quick. For me, it's like I remember 30 years ago as I came to the States. It's yesterday. I mean, literally 30 years went by like, just a blink of an eye. I look at my kids, my eldest is 26, my youngest is 16. I'm like, where did it go? And that's when you realize that you're really aging, and your muscle is not doing the same. Your body
My
is
baby is 33. Okay.
no judgment there. But you know what I mean, right? It's happening so fast, and by living the wrong life,
Right.
by working in the wrong place, by not doing what you love. Like I love to travel, and I recommend that for everybody out there. See the world, enjoy life. Like the moments that you have, that you capture in your memory and with your family and friends, they're not gonna come back again. And sometimes the places you see, you might not go back to. I mean, I just came from overseas, and I'm not sure when the next time I'll go back to those places, right? If I ever do. My mom was with me, and she's very aged, and so we almost made the commitment that probably this would have been the last time she would visit her homeland, right? We don't know that, but the fact is, there are things that you cannot control. Life just happens the way it is. And you don't realize it until you are at the extreme event. In your case, it was really that bad. And so it's funny. I was thinking about this as we were talking, right? Like you were talking, doctor. I think the show's title should be A Celebration of Life.
Yes. And I had a show title. Just forgot what it was. I'll look that show title up because it was something to that extent.
Right. So and then so in my case, I started like going through that experience that night, right? And then I said, if I get a second chance, I'll live every single second of my life true to my heart, and I'll do what I'll live a life with no regret. Well, I got lucky that night. I stayed alive, of course, and they kept me at the hospital for 10 days. They started doing tests after tests after tests, and they couldn't find any source of bleeding. They were looking at me, they're like, there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. And they did all different type of tests, like all different MRI, CT scans, like all different type of scopes, like everything, right? And there was absolutely nothing, wrong. And they said probably it was a virus that caused the bleeding. And then 10 days later, after 35 different tests, they sent me home. They also performed a laparoscopy, and they couldn't find anything. There was like nothing wrong. And they sent me home. And
just so that everybody understands what a laparoscopy is that they actually go in and look at your insides to see if there's anything going on there. So it is an invasive procedure.
right. So they're like, after that, they said, well, there's nothing wrong with you. Go home. Well, that you go home was the night before my 27th birthday. And I always looked at it as the most amazing birthday gift that I've ever received in my life. It felt like the rest of my life was given to me as a gift. And so ever since, every morning I woke up and I asked myself, if I die today, is there anything I would regret? And if there was anything on that list, I would go on a journey or on a path to be able to fix it and to remove it and to improve that in the situation, that I don't have any regrets. And I tell you, hasn't been easy. Probably I've lived one of the most exciting and challenging lives over the past 11 years since I decided to live a regret-free life, because there are things that are so hard to go through, and yet you choose to do them because you don't accept the sacrifice plan long term. So I mean, of course, anybody sacrifices certain things, right? But I decided not to have the sacrifice plan as a way of life. I didn't come to this world to sacrifice my life and die a person who's never felt that lived. We came to this world to live our best life and do the things that actually makes the biggest impact, or whatever it is that you choose. Every one of us has our own word, and so for some people, they came to this world for joy. For some people, came to this world for happiness. Some people came to this world for impact. Your word is your word, and as long as it's true to your heart, is true to your heart. And there is a chance that your word for some time is impact, for some time is joy, and for some time is happiness. And I know, for example, my word used to be success, and then that turned into fulfillment, and that turned into happiness. And so like that, it's just your word changes, as long as what you are doing is aligned, absolutely aligned with your heart and what you want to achieve, and you go for it and you live that. I believe you're in good health. Last year, I went on a 2,000-mile bicycle trip. So I rode my bicycle from Seattle to San Diego on Pacific Coast Highway, and it was about 2,000 miles. And there were a couple of points of that trip that I came very close to death, and to things happening, and almost fell off a cliff at one point. And I stopped, and like I'm literally at the edge of the cliff, and just have jumped off the bike. So the bike falls down and don't fall down, right? So the bike is at the edge of the cliff. I'm standing at the edge. I'm looking down. I'm like, well, that's 1,000 feet. So like, right? So I'm looking down and I'm like, if you had died today, would you regret anything? I'm like, well, good time for asking this question, right? It's just experience. And I'm like, nothing. There's absolutely nothing I would regret. And I'm like, okay, you're living life right. You're living life right. Okay, get back on the bike.
Not a lot of people could actually live to say that and actually get it to that point and do that. But it's amazing how that change that you kind of pushed through your life has become part of it. And now you do live with no regrets. And that's super. I mean, it's fantastic for people watching, listening. We should all be motivated by this and inspired right now.
Yeah.
I give you the title of the show. This is a good point to put the title of the show in. The title of the show is Winning the Game of Life After Saying No to Death.
Oh, I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There you go. We have it.
Yes.
So we had it from the beginning. I just forgot what it was.
So here is the thing. No matter what you do in life, there are going to be things that you would regret. That's a reality. I don't remember, there is actually a word for it in sociology. I don't remember the exact word for it, but there's a concept that no matter what you do in life, you would have regrets, right? And you do, right? Like, for example, last year I went through divorce. I went through separation with my ex, and I was in love with her, and she is in love with me. Like, we love each other. But then it got to a point that we needed to separate from each other because love wasn't enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I would look back at that and I would regret certain things, no matter what, right? So when we talk about living a life with no regret, it's not that you are not going to have regret, no matter what you do, because you're always making a choice. Always, like you're and then when even when you're not choosing between the two options you have, you are making a choice. You are making a choice of not changing things the way that they are. So at any given point you're making a choice, and there are chances that you make a choice on one thing and 2 months later you realize that you wanted the other choice, or 2 months later you say, well, I achieved this, I wish I had done the other one. So the brain always finds things to regret. But when it comes to living a life with no regret, we're not talking about those regrets. We're talking about regrets that are lifelong regrets that stop you from living true to your heart. Um, and that's a big distinction, because people are like, well, I was actually talking to a very successful entrepreneur a few months ago, and I asked him, I said, like, if you died today, what would you regret? And he said, I would regret not being with my kids as much as I could while they were growing up. And this is a guy that is spending pretty much 24/7 with his kids today. And the kids are like 18, 20, 25 right now, right? But then it was like, but when they were 6 and 7 and 8, there were many nights that I was working hard. And I regret. That's the only thing I regret, going back. And I said, well, is this a lifelong regret? And he said, well, I can't go back and get it. But the reality is that I have this because I did that. I can spend 24/7 with my kids right now because I did that work, right? So that's what I talk about, limited sacrifice. So anybody works hard. Anybody goes through hard situations. Anybody, like that's, I'm not saying that don't work hard any day. I'm not saying that don't, but know what you're working hard for and have boundaries around it. Anytime, any given time you go look back at your life, there are things you would regret. But are they lifelong regrets? And the lifelong regrets that cause you not living true to your heart. I'll tell you a story. A very close person in my life. Last year, he was 64. He woke up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m., sat at the dining table and said, my stomach hurts, and asked his wife to give him medication. And his wife went toward the kitchen and he died. 3 minutes. 3 minutes from the time that he woke up till the time that he died. When the ambulance got to their home, he was dead already for like 15 minutes. And 2 hours before this, he was at a party with some friends. And like all those friends say he was healthy, he was okay. Like what? Like no one can actually make sense of what happened, except that he just woke up and he died. And the one thing I know about this person is that every single year he said, let me get to September and I'll change my life. Let me get to September and I'll stop doing what I'm doing. Let me get to September. And September was an important.
Why September?
Oh, because he had a bookstore. So September he would sell a lot of things. So he was waiting for September to sell lots of things, so he would have money. So then he could change his work. He could change, right?
Right.
So every year he waited for September. He waited for the school day, right? It was like, I'm gonna get to school day. I'm like gonna get to end of August, beginning of September.
Got it.
I'll have money, and then right. So every every single year. And I just so happen to know that for the past 30 years, he was waiting for the September.
Mhm.
And um, don't do
That's
that.
kind of similar to the story that I've heard you tell about your dad. Um,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
exactly my dad, right? My dad was waiting for me to turn 18. So for for the people that haven't heard that story, my dad was a really good entrepreneur, and he always worked really, really hard. And one time I asked him, when I was 12, I asked him, I said, Dad, when do you want to stop all this crazy amount of work? And he said, as soon as you turn 18, I'm going to retire. Your mom and I have a plan to go buy an RV, and we want to travel the world. We want to go to Asia and Africa and Europe, and we're going to just travel the world with an RV. We're just waiting for you to turn 18. And then when I turned 15, my dad was diagnosed with a disease called ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. And when I turned 18, he passed away. He never retired. He never enjoyed his life, and he died with massive amount of regrets. And um, kind of seeing my dad's premature death and being on my deathbed 10 days before my 27th birthday, that combination made me who I am, and got me on the path to do what I do, because I don't want to see lots of people go through that experience. Um, so I'll just go out every day and try to tell people to live a life true to your purpose, build a business that's aligned with your purpose.
Yeah, let's talk about what you do and how you do it, because it's incredibly impactful. Iman is actually one of my mentors, and he came into my life at a time when I had just come through a near-death experience. And I came to Iman because I said I knew that I had a purpose, and I was in a rush to get to that purpose. I didn't have time to play around. And Iman took me in and took me through, carried me through the next 2 years, because the next 2 years were basically an incredibly difficult struggle with health and a relationship that was falling apart. And it really was the course, the family, the teachings that got me through that period. So tell us about the hope that you give, the positivity that you give.
Right. So in the core of it, I'll work with people to build a business that is aligned with their life purpose. Now, the vehicle that we use for that is by I teach people how to create and sell online courses, and how to share that knowledge and message with the world to create a big impact and build a successful business around it, so they can do all the other things they want to do. So I personally found the best vehicle for building a business that is based on impact and income and financial location and time freedom, to be creating and selling online courses, because that allows you to be anywhere in the world that you want, anytime that you choose to, and you still generate income. And so I personally found that vehicle to be the most important vehicle. But then the core and the reason I do that is because I want to help people to build a business that is along with their life purpose. And in a lot of my classes and events, that's actually what we focus on. We focus on personal development. We focus on understanding your life purpose. We focus on understanding your story. We focus on understanding what's getting in the way of your confidence. We have an event called Hot Mess Mastery that talks to people about like how to be a hot mess and still enjoy life, right? We have another event called Bullshit Mastery that we talk about how to deal with the bullshit that your brain tells you all the time about the story that you're living, right? And like we do all those things because at the end of the day, yes, business is amazing and great, but it should be in the serving of your life purpose. You shouldn't serve your business. Your business should serve your life purpose. Your business is just a vehicle, and it takes a little bit time for people to grasp this idea and to do this. Uh, but of course, people's lives change, and my goal in life is to make an impact in the lives of 100 million people, and I can't do that alone. So the way I'm doing it is by training 10,000 students. So each of them impact 10,000 clients' lives. So if I impact 10,000 people, help 10,000 people to make an impact in the lives of 10,000 clients each, now I've made an impact in the lives of 100 million people before I die. And that came actually on my 27th birthday as my goal. That I want to make an impact in the lives of 100 million people before I die. So that's
Iman,
and business is a vehicle for it.
Iman, I have to say, first of all, that's one way to do it. I mean, the other one is doing podcasts and shows, and these things can go viral, and a lot of people can watch them worldwide. And I think the impact of this is just, it's going to expand, all over. It's like wildfire. And by the way, great work, because you're right. The idea of business, everybody is going to work. Yeah, we have to make, some, living, right? Somehow. But the right way to do it is to enjoy your life, and to your point is to serve your purpose and your life, not the opposite around. Because some people work for the job, not the job for them. I mean, it's amazing how a lot of people are caught up in that scheme, and it's a problem. They don't know how to get out of it, and you have to figure it a way. And again, today with technology and the online space, I mean, there is a trend where people are actually moving towards it. A lot more,
Yes.
prior to pandemic, it was not. I think post-pandemic, a lot of people found their way online, and it's helping to a degree. And of course, courses and folks like you, doing the work, helping and guiding people. And I did want to just bring something back, to the topic about the story of your dad. It's something that actually happened to me personally, where I also started changing my life to this effect. Not a death experience or near death experience, but someone I worked with, whose father retired and died the same day or the next day. Okay. And so and the when this happened, I was 20 years ago, and he it was just like a mind, boggling thing. Like, it just it hits you at there, because this is a person that worked day in, day out to provide, to do, and then hoping that at the time when he retired, and a lot of people make that mistake, I want to retire and then I'll go check out the world. Well, there are no guarantees we're going to be here tomorrow. There are no guarantees we're going to be here today. I mean, your friend, 3 minutes, and he was no longer there. I had a friend who actually went home to his wife, and just said, I'm going to take a little breather and go to sleep. Never woke up. 50-year-old. So this is life. We don't have guarantees about the next stage of it. What we do know is we live the past, we have some experiences, and then we have today, and we have to maximize today's opportunities and live, to your point. So every day that goes by, we don't have any regrets past. And I'm not talking about the regrets that you mentioned, because you're right. There's always going to be decision making and choices, but it's really the big picture. Did I live
And
a fulfilling life or not? Yeah,
there's always going to be planning for the future,
Sure.
but you have to understand that you can't live in the future. All we have is today, and we have to live today and optimize, maximize what today brings, because tomorrow may never come.
Yeah. The moment is now, the time is now, and live your life as that you're going to live today forever. And then, of course, to your point, planning, I always do the plan. I mean, you have to plan the future, but there are no guarantees. You make choices, you make stuff. But if you don't plan, also, that can be a problem. Some people live day to day, which, it works for them.
Yes. Don't put off today. Don't put off life today.
That's right.
For this delayed gratification of the future. Because when the future comes, it's going to be today also. So you just need to live in today. Plan, but live.
Well, doctor, you're in the medical world, and you just gave the experience of you going down from the north down, from the West Coast, and you know what? That's a physical activity. Believe it or not, doesn't matter as you age. a lot of things that you could possibly have done sooner, you're not going to be able to do physically the same way. So just from that aspect of it, you want to enjoy today as max. Your body's still doing things. Make it work. Do whatever you can, with it. Enjoy it, because there will be a moment, even if you wanted to do it, you won't be able to. Your body's just not going to respond to it. And that's a big.
My mother had actually, for years, as long as I can remember, my mother had always said that we were going to go on a trip together. She liked to travel. My dad wasn't real big on the traveling, and I was a big adventurer. So she wanted to go on a trip together. And then my niece came along, and the plan was that the three of us were going to get to New York. We were going to go to New York, but she kept putting it off. My dad needed this, or this was going on. She kept putting it off. And in 2016, my mom passed away, and we never made that trip. And it's one of those things that I reflect on. I recently visited with my niece in New York, and we both kind of looked at each other and we said, Grandma should have been here. So don't put the things off that are important to you. Make a way to get to them. I mean, Iman just rode clean from the north now, and it's a hike because Iman lives in Canada, okay? And he rode all the way down to San Diego. So this was a major, major hike. And it's not like Iman was this major biker. He just decided one day that he was going to meet this challenge for himself. And, really, Iman, how much preparation did you have before you took that trip?
Actually, not much. I'm 270 pounds, so that's the first thing. Like, I'm not like a light guy that's like sports or whatever, right? I'm 200. At the time that I started the bike trip, I was 270 pounds, and I practiced probably for about 15 to 20 days, and I was like, you know what, the trip itself going to be the practice, So when I started. And I have herniated disc. So when I started, day one, I rode only like 3.5 hours, 4 hours. And then day two was like 4-hour ride, right? It was extremely challenging. And then by the end of the trip, there was a day that I rode what's known as the century ride. The century ride is riding 100 miles in a day. And actually, so that day, I also fell, dislocated my nose, broke my front teeth, and got a hairline fracture to my left hand, and put my nose back in place. And a cop came and said, like, do you want me to call you an ambulance? I'm like, no, I can still like do this. And I sat on the bike and continued riding the bike without being able to eat anything because I broke my front teeth, and couldn't breathe properly because my nose was swollen. But I was like, I'm on this trip because I wanted to do a physical challenge, and this got just better. And I finished. And this was the day after I separated from my ex. So October 1st we separated. October 2nd I sat on the bike and so rode the bike for 12 hours and got to my destination by 8 p.m. Started 8 a.m., finished at 8 p.m. and without eating anything the entire day, and biking for like 100 miles. So and with a broken hand and broken teeth. Kind of.
And he got COVID.
Oh, well, COVID was about a few days before that. So yeah, so I was in recovery from COVID at the time. So in early September I got COVID, and so this is like 4 weeks after that. You remember the freaking Sandra story, Dr. Cheryl?
Yes, the Sandra story.
So the cab driver that was driving me to get my COVID shot had COVID. So I got COVID on the way to get COVID shots. But anyways,
Iman, you do have a hard stop, right? So
yeah, I do have a hard stop, but this has been an amazing interview, and I'm really glad that we did this. And just really the chatters that matter. This is amazing name for this show.
So if you have two major takeaways, what is it that you want people to take away from this show?
Slow down the fast, crazy speed of life, and give yourself some time to understand what it is that you want and what it is that your heart wants. Like, what does it mean living true to your heart? Unfortunately, many people don't know how to dream, like have forgotten about dreaming. Like, if you ask them what's your dream, they can't tell you their dream because, but yet we spend hours and hours in front of TV. An average North American spends 5 hours a day in front of TV. 5 hours a day, and we spend like 15 to 20 hours a week on social media. And then we say we don't have time. Yes, you do. You just are spending it in a place that you are having a one-way communication with an outside world that is not real. So slow down, put them aside, sit and think about what life means to you and what you want to do and who matters to you, and start building relationships and connections and all of those things with things that actually matter to you. That's number one. And number two, I know this is very deep. This is very deep. But I highly recommend to people to sit and write their eulogy today, and see if you're living that eulogy. Like, if you had the chance to do your own eulogy, what do you want to say? And then look back and see if you're actually living that eulogy or you're living a different life. And if you're living a different life, go back and live the life that would give you the eulogy that you would be proud of. You are, with living, you're writing your life story. This is the interesting thing. You're the author of your life. Every decision you make is writing your autobiography, right? So you're a living autobiography. So live your life the way that you want your autobiography to be written.
Powerful.
That is excellent. And I strongly recommend that everybody do that eulogy assignment. That was one of the most powerful things that I've ever done. Iman, we thank you. You are such a wealth of information. You are so inspiring, motivating. I am grateful for you, my brother. So if you can tell our audience how they can find out more about you, find out more about what you're doing, your programs, because I recommend that program to everybody. I recommend Iman to everybody because it's a life-changing experience.
Thank you. So the easiest place for people to connect with me is my website, imanaghay.com. And that's my general website. And then from there, you can find different things that we do, because I have multiple businesses. So we have the Ultimate Course Formula, which actually I think on top of the page, you can find information about that, on how to create and sell online courses. And then I have a couple of other companies. The best place to go is imanaghay.com and connect with me there.
And we will be posting that information on the site with your bio and with a picture of your bright and shiny face.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And thanks for having me on this amazing interview.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank
you. Honor.
And we'll be sure to have you back, because there are loads of Iman stories and he has loads of excellent points to make. So, this will be an ongoing learning experience with Iman. But again, I do recommend that you go to his website and just eat that bad boy, the whole thing. So thank you again, Iman, for joining us. You have been listening to Chatters That Matters. Let's talk about it. And I am your show host, Dr. Cheryl Bryant Bruce, the celebrity doc, and my new co-host, Hurricane
Hurricane-ish.
H.